Would you like to learn a lot of vocabulary in a foreign language and you do not want to write them in a list and just memorize them, by heart, or maybe flashcards do not work for you, the spaced repetition system? Well then, I have a really interesting method for you, which is called the Goldlist method, and I can tell you it works amazingly. I have been using it for several languages, for German, Russian and Esperanto currently, and I'm really surprised at how this method works and how easy it is and how pleasant. The main idea of the method is that you do not want to learn the vocabulary. You just work with the words, you write them down in a nice way, in a cool way, relaxed way, and you let your brain decide what it wants to learn. So you're not trying to tell your brain, learn this word, it is important. No, you're just working with the vocabulary in a pleasant way. One of the most important things to be pleasant is to have a very nice notebook. So the first step is to buy a notebook that you like, a big one with lines. And what you do the first day, it's very simple. You just write a list of 20 words on this side of the page. You write them in the language you are learning. I was using this notebook for German, so there are German expressions, and you write the translation into your own language. For me, that was Slovak. So I wrote a few expressions and I translated them. I wrote them in a nice way, relaxed, no hurry, just having a good time writing vocabulary that I'm interested in. I wrote 20 of them, I read them out once, loud, and then I closed the book and didn't do anything with this list. Nothing at all. The next day, I wrote another list of vocabulary. I wrote another 20 words, 20 expressions, and translated them into my language, into Slovak. And I continued every day, for the first 2 weeks. Now, after the first 2 weeks, you get back to the first list. That's why you always keep a date that you write for every list. You look at the list and you decide which 70% of the vocabulary is the most difficult for you. And you rewrite it on the other side of the notebook. So I basically just write the same German and then Slovak. It is the same expressions that are here in the first list. As you can see, it's shorter. It's because I took 30% of the first list out of 20 words. This was 6 words. And I decided I'm not going to work with them anymore because I have already remembered them. And this is quite interesting because you will ask yourself, well, what if I don't? Trust me, this method works. If you do it in a relaxed way, do it in a nice way, you're not trying to put this into your memory, you're just writing it out, read it out once, and leave it for 2 weeks, your mind is going to remember 6 words out of these 20, more or less. Sometimes it may be 5 or 4, sometimes it may be 8, you will see. In any case, decide which of these 20 words are the most difficult for you and rewrite them. I have a system for that. I use, I cover the Slovak translations when I do distillation. This is distilling the vocabulary. I cover the Slovak ones and I test myself, I cover the German ones and I test myself which of the expressions I can use actively in German. And if I can use them, if I remember them, I put a tick. If I cannot, I put a dot or a circle if I have absolutely no clue how to say that word. And this system helps me to decide which of the vocabulary I should put to the other list and which I should totally discard. Now, what we do here is the same principle. We write it out nicely in a relaxed way, maybe in a different color, as you can see in my book, and we write the date, read it out once, and close it. Do not look at the list for 2 weeks, at least 2 weeks. It can be longer, but not longer than 2 months. After at least 2 weeks, I look at this list, and again I do exactly the same thing. I take 70% of this list and rewrite it below it. These words are the same as here, but we always discard, we delete the words that we already know. And again, you will be surprised that you will just by miracle remember about 30% of these words. So here there were 14, now we rewrite 10 of them. We write it out, read it once and close it. That's all. And after 2 weeks, and you probably know what's going to happen now, you take this list and you rewrite it here below the first list. So again, out of these 10 words, we took 7 that were the most difficult ones and we write it again in German or whatever language you are learning and the translation into our language, in my case, Slovak. In this way, we work with the most difficult words many times. And there are always at least 2 weeks between our contact with the words. This is very important because the method is for learning into the long-term memory. And this means that when you look at the words 2 weeks after the first time, and then after 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks, your brain has the time to really remember some of the words and keep them in the long-term memory. If you look at these words earlier, for example, you write a list and you do it tomorrow, you will remember many of them, much more, but it will be in your short-term memory. And we want to learn for longer. We want to be able to use the vocabulary later, right? So that's what we do. Now, what we do with this list, we don't have any more space on this page, and that's why we need another book. We take these words from individual lists, as you can see, many of them, and we copy them into a new basic list or in a new notebook. So we just take these 7 and these 7, and create a new list in a new book. The first book is called the bronze book. Then you continue with the silver one, again do the distillations every 2 weeks. And at the end you take these words and you can, if you want to, copy them into the final book and distill once again. And I can assure you, after so many distillations, even the most difficult vocabulary will stick in your mind and you will really know it in the long-term memory. So this is how it works. It's very important to write the dates of the list so that you always know if it is 2 weeks or longer, but do not make it more than 2 months because then the method will take you forever. And it is also quite a good idea to write the numbers of individual words or expressions and keep the numbering in every list individually. That means, as you can see in the first list, I started with number 1 up to 25. I started with 25 at the beginning, but then I decided 20 is better. And then the next list continues with the number 26. The second list starts with 1, I do the first 17 and then continue with the number 18, etc. So each list has their own numbering. And as you can see in my case also different colors. The question is where you can get the vocabulary. And the author of the method, who is known as Uncle Davy on the internet, suggests that you can use books that you are using for learning a language, a course book, or even maybe a dictionary or something, some collection of expressions. But actually, I suggest that you work with texts, that you find one source of text that you like reading. For example, for me, in this case, learning German on an advanced level, I used the magazine Focus, and I read a few articles every day. Basically, I kept reading every day until I got 20 or 25 words. Then I stopped, I put them into the book, translated them into Slovak using a dictionary, read them out once, closed the book. The next day I continued reading the Focus magazine again. And in this way, I can tell you even now, this was done 3 years ago, even today after 3 years, I can look at these expressions and I can usually tell you what the article was about. So it's amazing how we remember vocabulary when it is connected to something that we saw, that we saw in context. I remember what the articles were about, which is very useful. And one more thing, which I really find important, and I've already said it, is do not write individual words. You can see that my expressions are pretty long, And that's because almost never write individual words. I always write an expression that I saw in the text, a verb with a noun. For example, auf die Nase fallen, okay, in German. Or man muss sich auf Twitter kurz fassen. Okay, so that's an expression that I wanted to learn, and it is much better than individual words. I have another book which I'm using right now for learning Russian. As you can see, it's also quite beautiful, and that's why I have a very positive feeling when I want to do my gold list for that day. I just see the notebook lying on my table and I go, oh, this is a nice notebook, I want to write in it. And so I also write it in a very nice way, use different colors, and it's important to do it in a relaxed way, not to hurry up, and just enjoy the process. In this way, you really get the vocabulary into your long-term memory, and what is amazing is that this is also a kind of an intellectual game where you actually look at the words and you do not understand why you remember this word and not this one. And it's amazing to watch your brain in action, deciding what it wants to remember and what not. And this is what I love about the method. You are not telling your brain to remember something, but you are naturally letting it to pick what it wants to remember. And if it doesn't want to remember some other things, then we will show it to the brain again and again and again until it remembers it. So, if you think this method could be something for you, I suggest you get a very nice notebook, big one with lines, and start writing your first head list tomorrow, and then continue every day with a new list and learn vocabulary in a very natural and systematic way.